Imagine an operating room where the steadiest hands aren't actually human. They're these meticulously controlled, unbelievably precise robotic arms, and they're being guided by a surgeon who could be sitting across the room, or hey, maybe even across the globe. This isn't sci-fi anymore. Today, we're going to dive into the incredible story of the robotic surgeon's scalpel.
So let's just start with the big question right out of the gate. Could a robot perform your surgery? It's a thought that's both, totally fascinating and, for a lot of us, maybe a little bit unsettling.
But here's the thing. The answer isn't a straightforward yes or no. It's actually a story of evolution, a whole journey from these simple mechanical helpers to the dawn of AI in the operating room.
To really get a handle on where we're going, we've got to look back at where it all began. And that's with the very first generation of robots that ever stepped foot into a surgical theater.
So these early pioneers, they weren't doing complex operations all by themselves. No way. They were highly specialized assistants. Back in 1983, you had the arthrobot, which could move a patient's leg just using voice commands. Pretty cool, right? Then by '85, the Puma 560 arm was guiding needles for super delicate brain biopsies. And in 1992, Robotic totally changed the game for hip replacements by milling bone with the precision that's just, well, superhuman. The big takeaway here is that these were all pre-programmed tools made for very specific jobs. They weren't a direct, real-time extension of the surgeon's hands. But that was about to change in a big way.
And this brings us to the next massive leap forward. We're talking about a complete paradigm shift, moving from robots as single-task tools to robots as the surgeon's remote hands.
The key piece of tech behind this whole shift is something called a telemanipulator, or you might hear it called a master-slave system. The idea is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly powerful. A surgeon, who's the master, sits at a console and controls a robotic device, the slave, which is doing the actual surgery on the patient. The robot isn't thinking for itself. It's perfectly mimicking every single move the surgeon makes.
This diagram shows you exactly how it works. You've got the surgeon at the master console, right? Their hand movements get sent through a communication channel to the slave robot that's right there with the patient. The robot's tool literally becomes a direct real-time extension of the surgeon's own hands.
Now, the most famous example of this tech, and honestly the one that brought robotic surgery into the mainstream, is the Da Vinci surgical system. Here you can see its two main parts. You've got the surgeon's console, where they sit and control everything, and then there's the patient's side cart with all of its robotic arms holding these tiny surgical instruments. And this is the heart of its precision. The surgeon's natural hand movements are electronically translated into these micro-movements of the instruments inside the patient. The system can even scale the motion down, so a 1-inch movement of the surgeon's hand could become a tiny 1-millimeter movement at the instrument's tip. It's just incredible.
The advantages were an absolute revolution for what's called minimally invasive surgery. Surgeons get this magnified, high-def 3D view of what they're doing. That motion scaling allows for unbelievable precision. And get this system completely filters out any natural hand tremors. That's a total game changer when you're working millimeters away from a critical nerve. Plus, the instruments can twist and turn in ways a human wrist just can't, especially in tight spots. All of this makes it possible to do more complex procedures through tiny little incisions, which means less pain and a faster recovery for patients, especially in delicate areas like pediatric or ear, nose, and throat surgeries.
But for all its amazing precision, this revolutionary technology was missing something absolutely fundamental, something surgeons had relied on for centuries. And that missing piece is the sense of touch, or what we call haptic feedback. See, in open surgery, a surgeon can actually feel the difference between healthy tissue and a tumor, or sense the tension on a stitch as they pull it tight. That tactile information is absolutely critical for doing things safely and effectively. Most of the big commercial robotic systems, including the Da Vinci, simply don't send that sense of touch back to the surgeon. This means they have to rely only on visual cues, like watching how tissue stretches or squishes, to guess how much force they're applying, and that can lead to mistakes. So this created a huge question for researchers. How in the world do you give the sense of touch back to a robotic surgeon? And this is where the researcher gets really creative. Instead of trying to build force feedback right into the hand controllers, which can get super complex and unstable, some researchers are trying to, well, relocate that sensation. This slide shows an experiment with a wrist-worn device that gives haptic feedback. The idea is, as the robot's instrument touches the tissue, this little device buzzes or pushes on the surgeon's wrist, giving them that missing touch information through a completely different channel. It's a really fascinating workaround to a major problem.
Okay, so we've gone from simple assistance to remote-controlled hands. What's next? Well, the next frontier isn't just about better control. It's about giving the robot a mind of its own. We're talking about the dawn of autonomy.
You can really think about this whole evolution in 3 distinct generations. First, you have assisted robotics, like the Da Vinci, where the surgeon is in 100% control, all the time. Right now, we're entering the 2nd generation, semi-autonomous systems. This is where a robot can perform a specific, programmed task, like tying a perfect knot, but it's still under the surgeon's direct supervision. And the future? The 3rd generation is a fully autonomous robot that uses AI to perform an entire procedure from start to finish.
And hey, this isn't just some far-off theory. I want you to meet STAR, the smart tissue autonomous robot. It's a leading example of a 2nd-generation, semi-autonomous robot that is just pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible.
And the results from STAR are, frankly, groundbreaking. In studies where it performed something called intestinal anastomosis, which is the incredibly delicate job of stitching 2 ends of an intestine together, STAR showed superior precision and consistency compared to even expert human surgeons. The goal here isn't to replace surgeons, but to create tools that can perform certain repetitive, delicate tasks with superhuman accuracy.
Now, this future of precise and even autonomous surgery is incredibly exciting. But to bring this all back down to earth, we have to talk about the practical challenges we face today. And a huge one is the trade-off between all this amazing precision and the price tag.
To put a number on it for you, back in 2009, a Da Vinci Cis surgical system had an initial price tag of $1.75 million. And that's not even counting ongoing maintenance or the cost of all the specialized instruments you have to buy. That is a massive financial barrier for a lot of hospitals.
So every hospital has to weigh the costs and benefits. On the clinical pro side, the benefits for patients are super clear in many procedures. Faster recovery, less scarring, and incredible precision for complex operations. But on the con side, you've got that huge initial cost, there are limitations on the types of instruments available, and it can be a real logistical headache when a surgery requires working in multiple parts of the body.
Which brings us right back to our big question, but with a whole new angle. It's not just if a robot can perform surgery anymore, but how. As these systems evolve from being simple tools into semi-autonomous partners, what does that mean for the human surgeon? Will their role become more like a mission commander, a supervisor, or something else entirely? The answer to that is going to define the next chapter in the story of surgery.